All right, so welcome to the channel. My name is Daryl, and today I'm going to talk about how to reconcile and record an Amazon payout in QuickBooks Xero without using A2X. And I'm going to do what's called the manual journal entry method, or what I called it, I should say. And there's different ways to do this, but to be honest, I think this is the most simple way to do it. It's a little more advanced, but um, as far as workflows are concerned, I think it's the fastest and most efficient way to do it. So I'm going to go ahead and just get right into it. So the first thing you need to do is you need to download your bi-weekly Amazon settlement report. So here's a screenshot here. Go to Seller Central, go to Payments Dashboard, and print out your statements for the bi-weekly pay period, right? And then from there, you should get something that looks like this, right? So it's a breakdown between, sales, right? So you have all the various types of sales that you have, refunds, the various expenses, and then your net proceeds, which is what you see in your bank account, right? So the trick here is to, from an accounting perspective, I need to take this information and then I need to map it to the correct accounts in my accounting software. So it doesn't matter whether you use QuickBooks or Xero or any other accounting software, the principles remain the same. If you kind of understand you know the principles behind all of this, then you'll be able to execute. So I need to map these out to the right buckets, right? Um, and like I said, I'm going to use the manual journal entry method. So the first thing you need to figure out though is your chart of accounts actually accurate, right? Or like is it a representation of um, all these transactions? So here's an example chart of accounts that I would recommend using and what I use for all my clients. Um, on the SG&A side, just for standard regular expenses like rent, I'm not going to go over that, but this is how I would structure my P&L and my chart of accounts for Amazon sales and expenses, right? So typically for Amazon sales, I'd use the code 4000, refunds 4001, for example, and you could use whatever you want, but shipping, promotions, reimbursements, and then the expense side, right? You're paying out Amazon FBA fees, Amazon seller fees and charges, and then PPC, right? And then the net proceeds. Uh, so this is what makes my method a little different. We're going to create an account called Amazon Clearing, and I usually use the code 1994. Again, you could use whatever you want. So I would make sure these accounts are set up in your chart of accounts, and this don't worry, this whole template is going to be in the link in the description, so you could download this and work with it, right? And then also you'll have access to this journal entry template. So to get into the nitty gritty of it, right? Just to kind of explain this template, um, we're creating a manual journal entry, right? So to give you a little bit more context, right? Um, and especially for those without an accounting background, right? Every transaction in your system contains a debit and a credit. Okay. And everything you know about debits and credits in terms of your bank, just throw it out, right? Like the debits and credits in accounting are completely different. So let me kind of give you a real life example because I think the best way to learn this stuff is by doing. So say you're making a cash sale to a customer, right? Um, you would actually debit cash, right? And credit sales, right? So a debit to cash increases cash, and a credit to cash decreases cash, right? And then a debit to sales decreases sales, and a credit to sales increases sales. So I know that's kind of a lot, right? But as a rule of thumb, right, if you have a sales account like Amazon revenue, right, a credit increases sales, a debit decreases sales. And then on the expense side, right, like so a debit increases expenses, a credit Um, this should be decreases expenses. Decreases expenses. So if I wanted to record a transaction in the system, right? Say I paid rent to my landlord, it would be a debit to rent and then credit to cash, right? So say I paid $1,000 in rent, it'd be I debit $1,000 to rent to the rent account and then credit $1,000 in cash to the cash account, right? So that's just to give you, the overall basics. I'm not going to bore you with all these technical aspects of accounting, but it's important we understand that in order to get to the next step, right? So these transactions will flow through your bank account, and if you're familiar with how your accounting system works, and you should, right? If you're running your brand, you should have like a little bit of knowledge of how your accounting system works, right? Um, Transactions basically flow through, and then you're categorizing them to the right buckets. But a manual journal entry, basically, these are typically done at the end of the month, and they're more advanced entries, typically reserved for professional accountants, especially if you work at more dynamic in a more dynamic growth environment that's more complex with different channels and more complexities in the operations. A manual journal entry is done for every single business, and they're typically done at the end of the month. um, but it's basically like going in the back end and basically doing like a customized entry to reflect what's going on in the business, right? So I'm going to go ahead and create this manual journal entry because I want to reflect what's on this statement, right? So assuming that you guys created your chart of accounts and you created these specific categories, right? All we need to do is map these out. So the first thing we're going to do is product charges, right? So product charges came out to $27,858.10. So of course, those are Amazon sales. So we're going to put that to the Amazon sales GL code, and it's going to be a credit, right? Because we sales, right? To increase sales, it's going to be a credit. So I'm going to put that here. Okay. And then Amazon shipping, right? That came out to 317.90, right? So that was we're going to record that to the Amazon shipping account, which is revenue on our P&L, so on and so forth. Then we have Amazon fees as a sale. Like this is more of a I would say it's more of a reimbursement, right? So um that's actually on our P&L account, right? That's an expense. Let me So I'm going to credit that for 1440, right? Because we received money back for an expense, right? So that's a credit. Refer back to the rules on accounting at the bottom. And then Amazon reimbursement, right? We received money 300.38. We're going to put that here. Okay, great. And then refunds, right? So a refund is like they're taking money back, right? Customer returned items, so they're going to deduct from our sales. So that's going to be a debit, right? It's a decrease to sales. So we're going to put the 216.46 here, right? And that's where we pulled it from here, basically. This 216.46 is the net between refunded sales and refunded expenses, right? Okay, so I'm gonna go ahead and then the next step is this 932, these promo rebates, right? That's an expense, right? So that's going to hit the Amazon seller fees and charges account. So I'm basically coding these to all the right expense buckets, right? These are pretty straightforward. Advertising is going to go into the advertising account. These other Amazon fees are going to go to the seller fees and charges account. Amazon reimbursements, right? Or reversed reimbursements, I should say. So they're taking back the reimbursement. So we're just going to code that to, we're going to lower our Amazon reimbursement account. So that's going to be a debit. And then other, we're just going to put that as an expense, this 132.58 there. And then the net proceeds is going to be a debit to the Amazon clearing account. So after I create this entry, right, your debits and credits always equal to zero, right? And that's how you know you did it right. So it does you need to be able to set up your chart of accounts correctly. So you could go ahead and, whatever accounting software you're using, go ahead and set up these GL codes, right? And of course, everyone has their own numbering convention. This is just what I use. But the naming of the accounts is what I would use. That's what I would recommend. And then, yeah, so we have our journal entry, right? Debits equals credits, right? The sales are recorded for this biweekly pay period. And then your net proceeds is 11,333.20. That's going to hit the Amazon clearing account. So a clearing account is actually what's called a temporary account, right? It's a placeholder. So when you're reconciling your bank throughout the month, you're going to see this disbursement from Amazon come through. I want you to code that to the Amazon clearing account, right? And then when you post this entry, the temporary account should equal 0 at the end of the month. So the temporary account should always equal 0 at the end of the month, as a rule of thumb. Anyways, so that's about it, right? So once you get that, all you need to do is go ahead and post it. Here's an example of how to post it into Xero. You would go to accounting, manual journals, or journal report, then manual journal. And then you would create something like this, right? So you basically take everything from here in this journal entry template, and then you just plug it in here, and then use the date when the money came in to your account, right? So boom, you book the entry, you post it, and then once the cash comes into your bank, right, you're gonna see it look something like this in Xero. You're just gonna post it to the Amazon clearing. So that's about it. Um, your sales should show 27K on your P&L, right? All of these expenses should be reflected, and then your Amazon clearing account should net to 0 at the end of the month. And that's how you record it using the manual journal entry method. So, nobody. Yeah, so I know. So the manual journal entry is a bit more advanced, but if you do have a bit of accounting knowledge and you're willing to do some research and kind of educate yourself, which I actually recommend all business owners do, because at the end of the day, accounting is a language of business. So if you kind of understand these things, you could spot when things go wrong. Um, And also, just to go back to it, if your business is simple, right, you just get two payouts a month. It doesn't take long to do this. All you got to do is print out the report and use logic, and you could just follow my guideline here. Again, you could get this template with a link in the description. Um, and yeah, if you have any questions, feel free to reach out. All right, have a good one. Bye.